Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the, what board is this today? The Oakville Public Library Board for Thursday, October 28th. I say that because I've been spending my day in various board meetings. Welcome to members of the board and staff, and to anybody in the public that is tuning in to observe the deliberations of our board. Before we get started, I want to read a land acknowledgement on behalf of my board colleagues. We acknowledge that Halton is rich in the history and modern traditions of Indigenous people. Halton is on the traditional lands of the Mississaugas of the Credit, part of the Anishinaabe Nation that extends from Niagara Peninsula across Hamilton, Halton, and Toronto to the Rouge Valley. We want to thank the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nations for sharing their traditional territory with us. We also recognize the enduring presence of Indigenous people on this land. Members of the board, do you have any disclosures of conflicts or pecuniary interest to declare at this time? And I cannot see you. Let me just fix that. There we go. I don't see any hands, so we will move on to our minutes from the previous meeting. We have our minutes from both of our regular meeting as well as our confidential minutes from our September meeting. Can I get a motion to approve those minutes, please? Thank you, Bill. And who's going to second that for me? Thank you, Susan. Are there any questions, comments, errors, or omissions? Seeing none, is there any objection to the approval of the minutes as circulated? I do not see any, therefore those are approved. Good evening, Andrew. Moving on to our consent agenda, we have 4 items on our consent agenda. Would anybody like to separate any of those items this evening? Any separations at all? For the sake of the public, those are the listed outstanding board reports, the key agenda items, health and safety report, and employee retention and turnover metrics. Last call. Can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda, please? It's been moved by Pankage and seconded by Janet. Thank you very much. The consent agenda has been moved and seconded. All of the items there on 4.1 through 1.4. Any objections to the approval of the staff recommendations contained in those reports? Seeing none, those are approved. We do not have any confidential consent items, so we move right on to number 6, our discussion items, and we start the day off with a year-to-date financial status indicators.
So good evening. Just a few things to highlight with the year-to-date financial status indicator report as of August 31st. As you can see, we are projected to run a surplus this year, which is primarily being driven by personnel costs. And then you'll also see that there is some discrepancy in the program variance for innovation and integration in the area of collections. And you'll probably have noticed that because that tends to happen every year, just in the rate of publication kind of slows in the summer and then picks up again in the fall. So as we purchase books, we just purchase more in the fall for the end of the year. So that will actually balance out by the end of the year, where the personnel costs are the primary driver of the anticipated variance or surplus. So I am happy to take any questions, and Belinda and Delabar are both here to support if needed.
Any questions for the CEO? I do not see it. Can I get a motion to approve the
Yes.
Can I get a motion to receive the report?
We can't hear Jeff.
I had asked, sorry, I apologize, I shut off my mic. Are there any questions for the CEO on the report, on the year-to-date financial status indicators report? I'm not seeing any. Can I get a motion to receive the report, please? Moved by Janet, seconded by Pankage. Any objection to the approval of that report, of the approval of the motion? Seeing none, it is received. Okay. The 2022 Oakville Public Library operating budget, the big show.
Yes, and you'll notice that every time I bring this forward, it seems to get a little bit longer and a little bit more complicated. So hopefully you'll bear with me as I'm going to basically kind of give a high-level overview. And starting back with June, July. As you know, the town starts its budget process in June. And as part of that, the different areas are tasked with identifying what we anticipate are their key budget drivers, which were brought to the board in July. in the key budget driver reports, just to kind of highlight things that are going to have major influence on our budget as we plan for 2022. What I think also is important to note in context for this budget is early in early July, I guess, we were also starting to look at resuming pre-COVID operating hours at the library. We had started that process to kind of identify what the process would be in order to reintroduce those hours, and we were anticipating to do that in October. However, as you saw in the budget driver report we brought in July, there were things that were coming up as we were doing budget planning that caused us to take a pause on resuming those operating hours until we had an approved budget, because there were drivers that may require some shifting around of services or money within the operating budget in order to be able to support, and we weren't sure where that was going to all kind of pan out. And a lot of that information was provided in September in the operating report, where you saw that the drivers that we had anticipated in July had come out basically requiring a 6.1% increase for the library in order to be able to resume normal operations. And as you know, most of those drivers were related to compensation. There was some COVID impacts related to that as well. So we had presented that to the board in September, along with some potential mitigation options. Between September and October, we continue to work with the town. What normally happens is we prepare our budget, we then send it to the town for review. They kind of sit down, and Nancy is on to answer any questions that you may have about this process. So they consider the town budget as a whole, because we're just simply one part of the broader piece. And they really look at what are the key drivers through different departments, and that varies from year to year. So one year may see a department may have different drivers and stronger budget needs than others, and how that kind of balances with the full picture. And so we continue to work with the town. You'll remember also in September that they were still deliberating how to address the COVID impacts for 2022, whether or not that would come out of the tax levy or that will be funded through a different way. You will see in this report that they did decide that that will not be funded through the tax levy, which then bumped down OPL's ask from 6.1 to 5.1. Additionally, through town EMT's review of the overall budget and how OPL fits in their goal, they did tentatively approve the 5.1 budget on behalf of the OPL pending board approval. Now, what that would mean if the board then did approve the 5.1, we would be able to resume pre-COVID hours starting likely in January. There are some moving factors to that, mostly related to recruitment, but depending on what happens tonight, we'll kind of highlight how we progress with resuming some of our pre-COVID hours. So that's really the highlights. You will see that at the September board meeting, the board did ask for different mitigation factors, recognizing that the 5.1, now 5.1, is higher than what the town's target that we had been given at 2% was. So there is some options in there related to different service hours. Should that board want us to bring down the 5.1 ask to something lower, there is the option to do that. That would require us to cut current hours or service hours. So yeah, happy to take questions or add clarification.
Can I just ask for clarification? So
Sure.
the 5.1 has been approved internally in-house by EMT, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And secondly, I just want clarification on the hours issue. So you mentioned that you were going to return in October, but because of the budget issues, now we're looking at January. So so where are we right now with that? So based on this proposal, hours cannot resume to pre-COVID levels until the budget's approved? Is that what's being presented tonight?
So we have the money in our 2021 budget to resume pre-COVID hours. So we could start to do that. The limitation for 2021 is simply we actually don't have the staff because we're holding so many positions vacant, dependent on the budget for next year.
Right.
So just recognizing that the impacts that would actually require our budget, we wouldn't have the capacity to hire who we need to hire without the 5.1% increase, which would then require us to shrink some of our services.
Can I just ask, is it a possibility to, if you can't open all branches to pre-COVID levels, is it possible to open a couple branches to pre-COVID levels so that we're not totally shutting off services on those days? Like maybe one in the north and one in the south as an alternative?
Yeah, I mean, we could take a look at that. One of the other factors that we have is we have to give 1 month notice as per our collective agreement to change staff schedules. So we can have a conversation about what may be possible, but we'll take a look, but I'm not sure.
Sorry to jump ahead of everybody in the queue. Are there any more questions for the CEO? Okay, Andrew.
Hi, thanks, Tara. Just a question about the budget mitigations with the staffing. You mentioned that the 14 vacant positions amount to $174,000. It seems like a lot of positions. How many hours per week on average are those positions supposed to be working?
So those are all part-time positions, and part-time positions vary from, I think, roughly 16 hours a week to 24 hours a week, 28, depending.
Okay. It raises the question for me, do those people all want to be part-timers, or, are we just splitting positions that should be consolidated to be more full-time work for if people want it? I'm just curious about that.
So that is something that we look at every time a position becomes vacant. So we have over the past couple of years actually consolidated to create more full-time. There is at least 1 or 2 full-time positions that are added as part of this budget to move from a part-time to a full-time. We're also in the process of looking at, consolidating is not the right word, but I guess harmonizing our part-time hours across in order to kind of have the general part-time hours be 24, which is, I think, more palatable to a lot of people rather than the 16. Historically, we've had 10, 12, 14. They've been all over the place. So Simona and her team have been doing a lot of work as positions become vacant to really look at them and figure out, okay, can we combine these two to create more meaningful work? We are a 7-day-a-week, evening, weekend house, so part-time is a reality. But definitely, as we can add full-time staff where it makes sense, we are trying to do that.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew. Further questions? Janet?
Thank you, Tara. Tara, you and I had talked about trying to understand the cost, the labor cost of operating daily at the different branches. Were you able to get any information for us?
Yeah, I do. Belinda was able to pull some really preliminary numbers related to hourly costs by branch. I can tell you that hourly, on average, it costs about $227.85 to operate a facility. Now that varies from facility to facility, obviously. Glen, Abbey, Clearview operate very, very differently. I will say there are some factors that are missing from that number as well, but overall I think it gives a good sense. Programming is missing, and then there are staff members that work at multiple branches, so some of those calculations per branch aren't exact, but that is a general kind of average number we were able to put together.
Okay, so when we look at what you're proposing, I guess I just want to make sure I'm clear. So our current hours have they're as of today. Is that correct on Appendix B?
The current hours are as of, yes, right now.
Okay, and so the pre-pandemic, all the other facilities had 7 days a week except Clearview.
Yes.
Okay, so part of why I wanted to understand the hourly cost of operating, and I clarified that I get that there's a whole layer above and beyond labor, but labor is the primary driver. What drives the decision in the budget to have Clearview not have 2 full days where they're closed?
So Friday, you'll notice that we close at 5 on Fridays. And so with the limitations placed on us by the elementary school, we could only open at 3:30, so only being open for an hour and a half, we don't view as viable. Our staff shifts have to be a minimum of 3 hours, so it just doesn't make sense to do that. And then Sunday, I'm actually not sure historically why. It's just historically not been open on Sunday. I know that for other hours, and I know you and I have talked about this, that we tend to examine hours based on traffic flow. Our security gates do bilateral tracking, so allow us to track as people come and go through the branch. And so at least once a year, we do tend to take a peek at it and kind of figure out, okay, what is the traffic? And you've seen us do some tweaking. So we used to be open to 9:30. Now we're open at 9. We're having some conversations now, depending on how the budget pans out, whether or not that should be 8 or 8:30 at some locations, which would then allow us to operate longer hours on the weekend, which I think would be very welcome in the community. And that, again, is just based on the fact that traffic monitoring after 8 o'clock tends to be quite slow. So we do tend to use traffic patterns in order to identify exactly what our hours are, as well as our staffing. So understanding what's going on in the branches allows us to kind of determine what staffing level needs to happen at those branches as well. I will also speak to one of the other challenges of Clearview is it does have a pretty small staff. And so scheduling is kind of how we kind of determine parts of those pieces as well, if I remember correctly.
Okay, so thank you for that information. In regards to Friday, are you saying that we're not allowed to stay open past 5? Like, is there a reason it couldn't be 3:30 to 7, like 3:30 to 7:30 to meet your requirement in your union rule? Or is there something else that says, no, we have to close at 5?
No, that's basically a determination based on providing work-life balance to some of our staff and not being open on Friday night. Our traffic also tends to be quite low on Friday nights. The library isn't necessarily a space that attracts people on Friday. We could definitely be open as we are other evenings during the week after the library closes. It was just more the factor that we do try and standardize our hours wherever possible across, but that isn't always possible given some of the nature of our branches. But traditionally, that's the reason for Fridays.
So it'll be no surprise to others that I'm very concerned that we have a schedule that is, first of all, we don't have good traffic data for the last 18 months. I mean, let's face it, it's been kind of crazy. But we have a facility and we say we want to be accessible to the community and we want to be able to provide for all of the different communities. It's already a branch that doesn't provide the level of programming that others, and in part because of how it's laid out. And we're about to possibly put through a budget that doesn't increase the availability of services to a community that really is an outlier. I mean, it's kind of an island unto itself, and this is their community hub. And yet it doesn't get treated like their community hub. And if it costs $227 an hour, depending on, like, do we have room in the budget, as you've proposed, to increase those hours without changing the budget line, is my question.
Not without taking hours from another branch.
Or taking dollars from another area, is that possible? Like, is there room in your budget to facilitate some additional hours of service, you know, in particular on a Sunday, to the community?
Not without taking away from another service. So, I mean, we could look at, you know, there's other budget lines. We have collections, but if we take it from collections, that's a decrease in collections. If we take it from programming, it's a decrease in programming. Really, the only other option that we would have would be to take, like, we have an envelope, right, for all our operating hours, and we can reallocate that envelope however we wish to, and we tend to do that through traffic patterns, but it is a reallocation within existing hours. So if you're looking for us to increase Clearview hours, that would need to come from that same envelope and be reallocated from another branch or other branches.
So I guess what I would look to the rest of the board to consider is, you know, if you're closed all the time and you're closed on those days and you don't communicate it and you don't provide programming for it, of course your traffic is down. And I would like to see a concerted effort to provide services more equitably to Clearview. And I'm not suggesting you haven't worked hard to do great programming, and we have amazing stuff that's out there. But it isn't right that this facility does not have the level of operating hours that enable the community on a Sunday afternoon to go and walk their kids over and choose books for the week or do homework together, or everyone else has that opportunity more often than not. And for the amount of money, $227.85 an hour, surely we have enough funds to be able to open that branch within the 5.1. Because if there isn't room in the 5.1, then I'd suggest that 5.1% increase is not correct. We need to service the community equitably. That's my rant for the day.
Yeah, that's, I'm not sure the CEO can comment further on that. I mean, that would require an initiative on the part of the board to, I think, direct anything further. So I guess I leave that to you, Councillor, to figure out how you want to approach that. The staff have made the recommendation. You're certainly at your, within your rights to propose an alternative recommendation at this point, or at some point. But I'll leave that to.
Well, did you want a motion? Is that what I need to do?
Why don't you, do you have one written?
No, I was hoping to engage others to support what I think is right and fair. And I do think there should be room in the budget at 5.1 to make it happen so that others still are getting great service while we address the inequity.
Can I suggest you draft a motion, and I'll go to Bill, and then we'll come back to you before we get to motions, and I will take this as an I will acknowledge your intent to make a motion at this time and give you that opportunity to introduce it, and then we can have a conversation as a board. Bill?
I was just actually, I was also going to say that I agree with you. I think that's I think your points are well taken, and it makes sense to see if we can extend the hours at that particular library. So I certainly support looking at that. But I had just a question under fees and fines, and it's not really a big deal, but I was a little confused. I'm reading here, it says our rates were found to be aligned or higher than our neighboring libraries. As a result, OPL is recommending, as per the Town of Oakville Council direction, a 2% increase for fees. And I mean, that's fine, but it just seems to me that maybe that line should be, our rates were found to be aligned or lower than our neighboring, because it doesn't really make sense. As a result, we're increasing. If they're higher, then it doesn't, the sentence really doesn't make sense to me, but not a big deal, but I just thought I'd mention it.
Yeah, I think what that is that we're not recommending an increase to the base rate on top of that, just inflation is basically what we were saying there, is that we're not looking at increasing our rates beyond inflation. So I apologize, that should have been clearer.
Okay, fair enough.
Thanks, Bill. Further questions before I come back to Janet? Okay, so before I come back to Janet, I mean, you get a sense of what that motion is going to look like. Do you have an ability to cost that right now so that we can present that to the board, can understand the implications of her proposal?
Sure. I mean, Janet can go in two different directions, right? As she said, the board could ask for us to reallocate hours from other branches to that branch, but then becomes the question is, okay, we can do that and potentially bring that back to the board. That will delay, obviously, the resumption of pre-COVID hours, but that's something that we could do. We could take some hours from Central, Glen, Abbey, Iroquois Ridge, and kind of finesse in order to do that. Again, working within the envelope that we have, or the other option being that we could look at potentially increasing their ask. And I think, Nancy could probably speak to that better than I can about what that process would be. But I can try and get my calculator and maybe do some basic math.
So I shouldn't presume to prejudge what the counselor is going to propose, so maybe we should, are you prepared to put something on the floor here? Janet?
Um,
Or do you need a few more
well,
minutes?
I mean, I guess I'll look to others to help me wordsmith, but
Sure.
that OPL find the dollars necessary within the 5.1 budget presented to open Clearview on Sundays.
Okay.
And based on my calculation, the rough calculation of that is to get 5 hours or even 4, you're looking for $1,000 a day, 52 weeks of the year or whatever. That's 52,000 roughly. If I'm doing my math, I'm doing it on the top of my head, but
I see Nancy shaking her head slightly. I'm not sure if she's, does that sound like a reasonable calculation to you, Nancy?
That would seem reasonable. It'd be somewhere in that 52 to 55,000 range, I would think.
Okay.
There is some, I mean, that is just labor costs. There are cleaning costs and some other contracting that we would have to do in order to meet that, but just as an FYI, that's probably the base amount. It's probably higher than that, but not.
Can you give a sense of what that overhead cost might look like? Is it significant?
At the moment, we pay for daytime cleaning on Saturdays. I believe about.
Simone, you need to come to the mic, please.
Okay.
No, nobody will be able to hear you.
Maybe let me do my homework and I'll give you exact numbers.
Okay. So we'll just wait a moment until
Simone is going to
gives
try
us-
and just pull up really quickly what we pay for our cleaners.
Sure. Can I get a seconder for that motion so we can have a discussion about it? Thank you, Bill. Janet, do you want to speak to it further while Simone is doing her work, or shall we just wait a moment until we have her input?
The alternative motion that could go on the floor is to increase the budget from 5.1. But I didn't ask a couple of my other questions, which were related to, in an increase in revenue as a result of sponsorships. And we saw earlier this year some phenomenal work being presented in terms of getting increases in, I don't know if you call them development dollars or, but I didn't see an increase in that, and maybe I missed it, but I thought maybe there's an increase in revenue that is out there as a result of us staffing that position in 2021 and 2022 that would offset this additional expense. And that's why I've tabled that, find the dollars within the 5.1. Because sometimes when we look at budgets, I get that we each have, there are a bucket, but there should be the flexibility to move around in order to achieve the goal. And to me, the goal is that we should provide greater equity to Clearview. And that's why I've raised it. And you know what? I would have raised it if it wasn't in my ward. So I just want to be really clear about that. This isn't just about, I happen to be that counselor. It jumps out at me that it just does not feel fair and equitable.
Yeah, I can just speak to, so we do have some policies around fundraising and development dollars and how they're used. And we don't use them for operating. We use them for pilots or additional things to what we normally fund out of the tax levy or the grant that we get from the municipality. Like I said, sorry, Nancy, did you want to?
I was just going to add that the practice they have is actually very good policy, because you don't want to use one-time money, or you don't know for sure how much you'll get in fundraising. So to use that for ongoing costs, we tend not to do that.
Yeah. That's typically the case across all the boards that I work with anyways. Fundraising goes to capital and other revenues go to operating.
Well, so thank you for clarifying that. I wouldn't disagree with that. The one time doesn't give you sustainability. Then I guess we're looking for some slight shaving in areas where we could shave in order to get that $50,000 to $60,000 that would create a more equitable situation. And I'd be prepared to say, as a one-year pilot, let's give it 1 year and see with the right focus. If usage and programming goes up, how the community feels. But they need an opportunity to use this as their community hub.
So our estimated cleaning costs for the year with that increase in hours is around 20,000. So it would be 72,000 is what we estimate that those increase of 4 hours a week would be.
$20,000 for one extra day a week for
Yes.
the whole year? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, $20,000 for cleaning for that extra day, yes, for the year.
I think I'm going to go into the cleaning business.
Yeah, me too.
I'll partner with you guys.
So I was wondering, maybe what we could do is play around with maybe the closing hours of Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, for instance. Like is 7 o'clock is it busy in that library between 6 and 7? I mean, you could maybe shape it, close it off at 6 o'clock, and I don't know, it's just a thought, but
You reallocate the Clearview hours somewhere else? Is that
yeah.
sorry?
Well, yeah,
Yeah, I'm seeing
within the same number of hours, but just play around with sort of the closing hours of those other days.
So rather than go
possibility.
3:30 to 8:30, go 3:30 to 7:30 and take those
Or
other 4
something,
hours?
yeah. I mean, I don't know how busy the library is at the last hour of the day, but maybe there's a chance there.
We'd have to pull traffic from we're pulling traffic from 2019 at this point is kind of how we're reviewing it. We will be reviewing traffic again partway through 2021 because we do anticipate that once traffic does start to increase, we may see different traffic patterns, and we continue to tweak as it does come. Yeah.
I couldn't live with going below 8 o'clock because families get home. They may want to rush over to the library and and again, we're taking hours away from a community that should get hours. I don't want to be the one who says, well, when you look at the hour, you get 46 hours at 16 Mile. You are getting almost 2 times what Clearview has. I get it's a growing community. I welcome that we're going to put in an amazing new facility as well there. But I can't understand the justification that one gets 46 and one gets 24.5. And if it costs us $72,000 to provide a service, which we talk about, wanting to extend our reach and build healthy communities. This is a community that, again, is an island unto themselves. Getting out of Clearview to go to some place is car driven. They do not have public transit that meets their needs. They have a transit that gets to Cox and GO Station. But they don't have access to just hop on and get over to the other. So they're all car driven. So in order to even enjoy our services at a different time, they've got to get in a car. Seems to me that we should have some wiggle room in other areas to be able to support it. I really hope you'll all support the motion on the floor. I'll reread it. That the OPL find the dollars within the 5.1% budget to open the Clearview branch on Sundays.
Probably there's a caveat there. Once we return to pre-COVID hours, I assume.
Sure.
Yeah. So that leads to my question. Is you said, Madam CEO, you said something that doing this could impact the ability to return to pre-COVID hours. Could you expand on what you meant by that?
Well, I guess it depends on what the board wants. So if the board's willing to give us that direction and allow us to reallocate hours from other locations to Clearview and doesn't want to know or have approval over that, we're more than happy to go forward and do that. But if the board wants to see the hours, we'll bring the hours here regardless. But that's what I'm talking about.
I misunderstood where you were going.
Yeah.
I was concerned that would somehow impede the ability, or you were suggesting that it would somehow impede the ability to return the system to pre-COVID hours. Okay,
No.
Terrific. Okay, you've made your argument, Councillor. The motion's been moved and seconded. I'm going to ask if there's anybody else that wishes to speak to it.
I just want to be clear on the implications. Is we'll be trimming hours at other branches.
Correct.
Like that's the way to do it, right?
Yes.
Okay, can we add that to the motion? Just for clarity? No?
I'm seeing a no from the mover.
Okay, maybe I should speak to.
I'm sorry?
Go ahead, Janet.
I
Well, hold on
just
a
think
second.
that
Hold on a second. I'm chairing the meeting. I just wanted, I didn't understand. I didn't hear what you said, Andrew. Could you repeat what you just said?
Well, I asked if it should be added to the motion, and Janet shook her head, and then I thought you called on her, and so I was
No, I didn't.
trying to say
No,
I'm
you
done.
still had,
Okay.
you still had the floor.
I'm sorry. Okay, I thought you did. So that was just my question was, could we add that to the motion? That the adding hours to Clearview would be rebalancing them from the total system, the hours. It wouldn't be a reduction in other parts of the budget.
So are you making that as an amendment to the amendment?
I suppose I am.
Okay, actually, I guess that's not an amendment to amendment because we haven't made the main motion yet. It would be an amendment to the motion. Yes.
And just for clarity, the motion could read something like that OPL reallocate operating hours to then, and then continue Councillor Hassett-Thiel's regular motion.
Okay. So are you making that motion as an amendment to Councillor Hassett-Thiel's motion, Andrew?
Yes.
Okay. Is there a seconder for Andrew's amendment to the motion? There's no seconder, so that fails. So let's go back to the original motion then. I will ask for any more.
Sorry, Councillor Knoll.
Yes.
Chair Knoll, I was thinking about it. So I would want to second it, I believe.
Okay, I will be a friendly chair and allow that. So the amendment has been moved and seconded. Andrew, do you wish to speak to it further?
Yeah, my only remark was it's just for clarity because it's something that we talked about the implications, but it wasn't actually mentioned explicitly in the motion. So
Okay.
That's the reason for my requested amendment.
Okay, thank you. Do you wish to speak to it, Pankaj?
Well, I don't know if my comments are not gratuitous, but well, firstly, thank you for allowing me that. But I'm just finding this motion a bit rushed. I'm just a little concerned that we haven't studied this enough. We're just passing it, we're adopting and possibly passing a motion about Clearview, but I need more information, I think. You know, because I'm hearing on the one hand that, well, there's not enough traffic on Sundays, and you know, does this even make sense? Is this the tail wagging the dog? On the other hand, I acknowledge Councillor Thiel's concerns that, well, you know, here's a branch that perhaps is underserving our community. So I haven't got a clear picture in my head. Okay, what exactly are we doing here? Are we, you know, robbing Peter to pay Paul, or what are we doing here?
Okay.
Like, is this even required? Is there a real need here? I'm not getting that picture yet.
Okay. Okay, anything further on the amendment to the motion? Janet?
So the rebalancing, I could support it. And I guess I'm worried about the message that it sends. We're talking about finding 4 hours and some additional outrageous cleaning costs, but 4 hours. So there has to be room to find 4 hours. So I would support the amendment if the rebalancing is that we acknowledge that, you know, we're not asking the world here. We are looking to create a greater opportunity for people to enjoy and benefit from all the hard work and services the public library has to offer. So I would support the amendment on the floor.
Okay, thank you. Anything further on the amendment only? Are there objectors to the amendment that has been proposed? And once again, that amendment is to, assuming the main motion passes, that amendment would alter the motion to, actually, could you, Jessica, could you just read that for me so it's clear?
If you'd like to give me a moment or two, I can actually craft you a whole motion that incorporates both.
Okay. Can we just, let's give Jessica a moment just so that we have absolute clarity on what it is we're doing. So that way we, there's no, that's a good idea. I'm going to call a 5-minute recess to allow Jessica to do her writing, because I don't think she does well with me staring at her as she's writing this motion. So I'm declaring a 5-minute break. We reconvene at 7:45. Members of the board, I'm calling the meeting back to order. Are we back live in television land? There we go. Hello, members. We're back. I'm going to have Jessica put the motion and its amendment on the screen so that we can make sure that we captured it correctly. And then I have a request.
Jeff, can I speak to this just briefly?
You can.
So I think I mentioned this really briefly at the beginning when I kind of gave the intro into this report. In that early July, we had actually taken a look at, okay, if we resume pre-COVID hours, what would they be? Because this is a prime opportunity for us to rethink those hours. And at that time, we had identified adjusting some of the open hour for some of the branches in order to increase, and I mentioned Glen Abbey and Iroquois Ridge, for them to be open longer on Sunday. So we could, instead of that, shift some of those hours rather than extending Glen Abbey and Iroquois Ridge, shift those over to Clearview. Simona did that work, and that would
So then
accommodate
that-
that. So
that's-
it was exactly what you're
So
asking.
that would work within the context of the
Correct.
amendment. Okay. Okay, so you've seen the motion there. Is that satisfactory with the both movers and both seconders? Janet? Thumbs up from Andrew.
My audio cut out. Could you just repeat what you just said, please, Tara? Because it's too important for me not to have heard the whole thing.
Yep.
Sure. Sorry, when we looked at resuming pre-COVID operating levels, we weren't going to resume the exact same hours. We had taken a look at, okay, where can we kind of reallocate? Given the fact that we've been closed for a while, it's a great opportunity to kind of revisit our operating hours. And we had identified hours through a number of different branches that we were going to take out and extend operating hours on Sunday at Glen Abbey and Iroquois Ridge. So we had made that thought, and we were looking at implementing that. So based on this, we would just take those that we've reallocated anyway from the branches and shift them to Clearview versus Iroquois Ridge and Glen Abbey.
And how much would that impact Iroquois and, like, is it 2 hours each that they'd be impacted, or?
Roughly, yes.
Okay. Okay, thank you for repeating that for me. I'm sorry, sometimes audio just goes.
May I ask a follow-on, though?
You can. Who's speaking? I'm sorry, I don't see
It's
everybody.
Pankaj.
Hey,
It's
okay.
Pankaj. So Tara, sorry, in the first instance, when you found that Iroquois and Glen Abbey maybe would have benefited from those hours, that must have been for a reason, right? I mean, maybe you're seeing more traffic there, maybe they're busier libraries and there's a need to extend those hours for those two branches. I think where I'm sorry to be such a stick in the mud here, but I think what I'm leaning towards, leaving aside the two motions, which I would support, is why can't we just find the budget without I guess I'm now going against what perhaps Andrew's proposed and I've seconded is, can we not find the dollars without, changing the need that I guess you might have landed on in the first place for Glen Abbey and Iroquois, because both those libraries, to my knowledge, are very busy and very, very, happily used by the communities in which they reside. So can we do better, I guess, is all I'm asking.
So
Without allocating those hours.
yeah, Pankaj, the way to do that would be to, and I apologize to Andrew, the way to do that would be to vote Andrew's motion down. And then the main motion is basically to leave it to staff to find the dollars, and we can provide, and I guess by that, we've all ultimately provided some direction in that regard by saying, we don't want you to necessarily reallocate hours.
Yeah, and I think that is where I would like to go. And Andrew, I do apologize, but perhaps it's the lack of my second cup of coffee today.
It's getting kind of late for that now.
Yeah, I know. That's why I didn't have it.
Okay, so I have, are we done talking about those two motions for the moment? Because I have something I want to introduce. Andrew?
Thank you. Pankaj, no offense taken, don't worry. I guess I'm curious to know, I mean, given the guidelines that were already put in place by the town, given the extensive work that's been done on building this budget, I struggle to understand where else that might come from. I mean, is it going to come from collections? Is it kind of come from equipment upgrades? I mean, without that information, what are we approving? right? We're just saying, go find the money without clear direction. And so I struggle with that a little bit as well.
I understand.
Tara, do you have any further thoughts on that?
No, I mean, you're right, the money has to come from somewhere. I'd have to take a look, but we attempted to keep our increase as low as possible, and really did take a really strong look. So it's gonna have to come, and you're right, it will have an impact somewhere. I can't say where, because we'll have to look at where we have to take it that has the smallest impact.
Can I ask a question to potentially help here, Andrew? Is Nancy's here, I just can't see her. Nancy, what would $73,000 do to our budget request? Besides,
0.7.
Pardon me?
Sorry, go ahead, Nancy.
Besides invoking a phone call from the CAO to me, that wouldn't be pleasant. How would that impact our request to council for budget?
So through you, Chair Knoll, right now, the way we've compiled the budget and EMT has signed off, we have come in within council's direction. So council directed us to an overall increase in line with inflation. We have done that. There are a series of service enhancements that have been referred to budget committee, and those will go to budget committee for their decision on whether they want to add them in. I would suggest if you wanted to go above the 5.1, 5.1 is high, but there are reasons why it had to come in at that with various personnel issues, et cetera. So we were able to incorporate that budget in there. I would suggest that it would go, if you wanted to go above that you would do a motion that council be requested to amend the budget and add that new service enhancement in. The budget committee would have to look at that in light of the overall budget and where it lands to determine whether or not they're willing to add that in. I don't know dollar wise how much it would be. It wouldn't be a huge amount on the percentage, but the budget is fairly tight. So it would be the budget committee and council's ultimate decision on whether or not to approve the amendment.
Okay. I asked that question just to help frame the discussion here. Janet, Andrew had the floor. Do you have anything further, Andrew, to
I
hoping that was
do,
helpful?
and this might be a procedural question, but would it make sense to, let me think about this structure too. If we approved Janet's motion, then the direction would be to approve the budget as it stands with the 5.1% increase. And then could we move a further item to request the additional increase to compensate for the operating hours? So an increase of the extra 72,000-ish.
I would suggest that's a contrary motion, because one motion is to find it in the budget, and then the second motion would be to increase the budget. So I would interpret that as being contrary and therefore not in order. So if you want to, I mean, I love parliamentary procedure. If you want to, try once again to amend, I mean, we haven't voted on your motion yet. I mean, if you want to try once again to amend the motion to basically, no, I guess we can't. That's Jessica.
No.
Is that contrary to the main motion if we were to change, if there was an amendment to increase the budget instead of finding the dollars? Because it's kind of contrary, isn't it?
These motions have not been voted on yet. If the mover wishes to
Okay. No, I knew
adjust
that
their
part. I
motion.
knew that part. Yeah.
Okay. All right. I have no further questions or remarks. Thank you.
Thank you. Janet, let's just get your viewpoint on this. Do you want to proceed with the motion that's here, or would you like to proceed with an attempt at a budget increase? You seem to be very uncomfortable with the notion that we would somehow reallocate hours. So I just want to get a sense of what your comfort level is on this and whether you want to plead your case to council or to the budget committee, which I'm on this year.
Okay, so it's the word reallocation that it just sounded like we're robbing Peter to pay Paul, kind of. It just felt like we're looking for 4 hours here. By the time you took a half hour off on a couple of shifts, you're pretty much going to get to the 4 hours. But it is a reallocation. That's why I said I would have supported the amendment that's there. I would prefer that we as a board stand for equitable access to public library services, and that we do it within the budget that we
Okay.
have.
Okay.
And yes, we may have some shaving that occurs if we end up approving Andrew and Pangit's motion. But I think if you look at what's happened in the last year, there was some savings that occurred in other ways. And if I thought that it wasn't achievable, I think it is doable without creating, without lowering the quality of service that we provide in other locations and or other services we provide.
Okay.
So I'm hopeful that we could do it within the 2022 without having to go and ask for additional funds. It will be a difficult, there's always a long list, as you know, Chair Noel, of requests. And you as a board lose control of that decision when you don't make it tonight. It will sit with the budget committee, who doesn't know intimately your desires around the strategic plan, your pride in equitable access, your commitment to helping build healthy communities. You of all people know more intimately the Public Library Board. So I prefer we make the decision tonight and not be going to the budget committee. I think that it's our responsibility to speak on behalf of our clients, our members, our public library community.
Okay, thank you, Janet. Okay, so I'm going to make my request after this, not to confuse things. So let's just deal with these items first. And I have a request. I'm hoping somebody will consider making a motion, because I can't. And I will explain that in a moment. So let's deal with what we have on the floor now. I'm going to ask one more time, is there any further comments or questions on the motion by Andrew, seconded by Pankaj? Okay, I don't see any. I'm going to call, are there any objections to the amendment to the motion? So therefore, the amendment to the motion is carried. So now let's turn to the main motion. Let's just put that up for a couple seconds once again. So the main motion is that OPL find the dollars necessary within the 2022 operating budget to open Clearview on Sundays for 4 hours a day. So the amended motion, if this motion approves, amends that to, instead of find the dollars necessary, to fund that the funds to open Clearview be reallocated from the existing base of branch. Can you, one is kind of contrary to the other, I think, and we're not specifically.
You've now voted on the second motion.
We've voted on the amendment to the motion. So I'm just unclear what that motion actually is now.
So we can recraft the first one slightly.
Yeah. Actually, all we have to do, Jessica, is find the dollars necessary within the 22-20 operating budget and add, so if we do that, OPL open Clearview on Sundays for 4 hours and funded from the reallocation of the existing base of branch hours. I think that's a clear amendment. That's a clear.
That's a bit of a duplication because we just voted on that, but your original motion could just be that OPL open Clearview on Sundays for 4 hours a day.
That's a really good point, because the second one,
And the second one covers where your funds
Thank
are
you.
coming from.
Okay. Are you satisfied with that, Janet? Thank you. Okay. That's the motion. Are there any further comments, questions?
I'm sorry to be such a nitpicker,
That's fine.
but on the second motion, I don't like the word daily. That's Pankaj speaking, by the way. I don't like the word daily. It's 4 hours on Sundays, not daily on Sundays.
Okay? I think that's a reasonable and friendly amendment. Andrew?
I'll leave it to you to determine if it's appropriate to modify it at this stage, but I would argue that you could say the way it's written now, if you take it that word daily means we could pick and choose which Sundays we do it on.
But
I
it's
mean, if we
not,
want to get picky.
yeah, I'm accepting it as being the like, if you're okay with it, I'm accepting it as being an amendment, not an amendment, but a structural change. We're allowed to make, basically motions can have minor changes as long as it doesn't affect the intent of the motion. That's correct, right, Jessica? That's generally the rule of thumb in the
Yeah,
clerking
so
world?
the clerk's department and the clerk of the meeting is able to wordsmith for grammar, and as long as it doesn't change the intent of the motion, we're basically, in a roundabout way, we're able to make it sound pretty after.
We'd be lost without you. Thank you.
That's why I keep deferring to her. I'm a smart chair. Okay, so we've got the motion before us. Pankaj, you still have the floor. Do you wish to say anything further?
I do not, thank you, Chair
Okay.
Noel.
So I'll take a moment to make a comment. I support the motion. I support Councillor Hazathiel's initiative here. I just want to, I know that there's some concern about doing this on a knee-jerk basis, or are we opening a branch that maybe doesn't have necessarily the traffic, the demonstrated traffic to justify it. So two things on that. The first of all, this is really the chance we have to do this. So unfortunately, we don't have a long period of time to study this issue. And I'm not sure that necessarily it is simply a matter of the metrics of the number of people versus the hours. I think it's a municipal service issue. And I'll give you an example. We run a whole bunch of buses, and you see them every day. And a lot of the times those buses are empty. And we get a lot of people saying, why are you running buses? Because they're empty. Well, if we don't run empty buses, you can't really have a customer base that will take the bus during the peak periods, because in order to make it work, they have to be accessible at all times, and we have to provide that service. So it's a cost of doing municipal business to sometimes operate things that don't necessarily jive from a profit and loss point of view. So the libraries, I think we've all acknowledged as a board, is an essential service in our community. We're all totally bought into that concept. This is something that we literally live as members of the board, and so many of us for long periods of time. We believe that libraries are an essential service, not just from a service perspective, but from, as Janet said earlier, a quality of life perspective. So I think that, I have total comfort in doing this, because the people of Clearview pay taxes and live and build this community as much as people from River Oaks or Iroquois Ridge or Bronte, and they deserve equitable access to their library branch that they fought for a long time to get. So I'm happy with the motion. I thank Councillor Hazathiel for her not only representing the library service like she has, but also looking after her constituents with this motion. I think it's a good motion, and I look forward to its passage, and I hope it's unanimous. But having said that, it doesn't have to be. Anyway, I'm going to stop there and ask if there's any further comments that I may have triggered. I don't see any, so I'm going to ask for objections to the motion as presented. I can't see everybody. Would you mind giving me back the full Zoom? Any objections to the motion?
Oh, no. So can I say something though? I agree with you. What you're saying about having libraries open. I mean, it's pretty amazing when you consider 3 libraries in this town are closed 3 days a week. It's pretty amazing if you think about it. I mean, I don't think most people would think that's a great idea, but I realize, there's a budget to deal with, but it's just kind of a weird optic, if you ask me.
And in fairness to the staff are trying to live within the confines of budgets and COVID implications and everything else. So none of this is to fault any of the team for doing what we pay them to do so well. And it's just that, as the representatives of the community, I think that, we're trying to maybe plus it a little bit. So with that, thank you for those comments, Bill. I'll call for any objections to the main motion. Seeing none, that carries unanimously. Thank you, everybody. That was some good work. So my next request before we get to the main motion of the budget is, and I did talk, fair warning, I did talk to Tara a little bit about this during the recess to make sure that I had something to work with. And Jessica, did you type up that motion? So I've got a suggested motion. I can't make motions, so I can either pass the chair, except my vice chair is not here, or I could ask one of you if you'd be prepared to make this motion. Okay, we're just getting it ready. And this relates to returning to pre-COVID hours. And then I'm going to ask Tara to speak to it, and then we'll see how it flies. And I will tell you as a precursor to this, it doesn't impact the budget. It's simply a logistics matter. So the motion would be that staff be directed to resume pre-COVID hours as soon as staffing permits in 2 branches, one in the south and one in the north. And what this is this is a stopgap measure to get us basically to next year. And the reason I want to do this is, first of all, I don't know what Councillor Hazathiel is hearing, but I'm getting a lot of constituent feedback about their libraries not being open. And I understand that we're not just dealing with a financial issue here, we're definitely dealing with an HR issue that every organization seems to be dealing with right now. This isn't unique to libraries. So this basically is a stopgap measure to get us to the post-budget approval period when we can formally return all of our branches back to pre-COVID hours, assuming the council approves the budget, and there's no reason for them not to, since we're still coming, until we pass the motion, it looks like we're coming in on target. But this will get us 2 branches going, and the reason I want to do this now is because we've heard there's a 30-day wait period to change the schedule, so that means the earliest really we're going to be able to do this is December. If we wait until the budget is approved, and I understand that there can be some jiggery-pokery around with dates and such to try to make it happen faster. If we wait till the budget's approved, we're probably not going to see any change until sometime in February, I would guess. So this is going to get us at least a month earlier of at least 2 branches open. So in my mind, it's a compromise to get us that point. I'll have Tara speak to it, but there's no budgetary implications that I understand on this whatsoever. It's simply a matter of logistics to pull together the staffing in the restrictions of the collective agreement that we have. So before I ask Tara to speak, is anybody interested in sponsoring my motion? Please don't do that to me. Okay. Bill's moving it. Is there a seconder to that? Thanks, Janet.
I'll give you a second, Nate.
Thank you. Okay. I think I saw Janet's hand go up first, yeah. But then Pankage also spoke, so there was a mad dash for seconding. Anyway, Tara, can you please address the motion? Provide some commentary.
Yeah, and it actually works out relatively well. So we in the report, we actually provided you with 3 different schedules. We presented you with our current schedule, a proposed schedule, and our pre-COVID schedule. So what we can do based on some of the limitations that we have that Jeff highlighted in terms of our staffing shortages, as well as our 30-day schedule change requirement as per our collective agreement, pending approval of Jeff's motion, we will look to implement the proposed hours that's actually in the document, which actually then opens up Glen Abbey and Woodside on Mondays, which I think will do a significant help, one in the south, one in the north, but will actually allow us to, right now we're about 220 hours and we'll be able to get up to closer to 270 with that. So we can take that step, and then once the budget is approved, we can then get back to our normal 390 hours as soon as possible as we can in the new year, pending recruitment, which I think, fingers crossed, but could be a significant challenge for us.
Like I said, it's not perfect, but it's a great move in that direction. Okay, so can we take the motion down so that we can, I can see my colleagues. Any questions? Comments? Any objection to the motion? Therefore, I declare the motion approved. Thank you very much, everybody. I appreciate your cooperation on that, and I think that was another good piece of work. Okay, so the main game is 6.2, which is the motion, which is the approval of our budget submitted to be submitted to town council for approval. Is there further discussion, further questions? Janet?
So I just want to come back to development dollars. So just because I now understand that we absolutely have to allocate them and that policy is clear, but do you anticipate an increase in as a result of staffing those positions in terms of, because we've got a grants revenue section activity, am I missing it? Like, is there a donation sponsorship line that you've declared?
We don't include any development dollars in our operating budget, no. Well, I guess that's, no, fundraising, no. I'm thinking in terms of like HIP, some of the grants we get from HIP that we do, but in terms of what we fundraise, that is not included in any operating line.
Okay, so just for clarity then, those dollars are reported to us
Correct.
separately, but those dollars may very well supplement the collections that we purchase, correct?
Yes, I mean, we haven't used development dollars for collections because it is a bit of an operating cost. But yes, I mean, we do have money held from fundraising that we can use and do use throughout the year to supplement that kind of value add piece to our programs and our other areas. We tend to use them to run pilots, and then after we do an evaluation, we tend to roll them into operating and then move on to new kind of areas to explore using the development dollars.
Just for clarification, collections are not, even though they're a tangible asset, they're not considered capital, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, they're an operating cost.
But we would have the flexibility. If somebody stepped up and said, I want to provide you with X amount of dollars to increase your collections in the following area, I would hope we graciously accept those funds, and that could augment our collections.
We do have several of those, yes.
Right, okay, all right. And my last question is just around the sensitivity of those individuals who, even though our charges are just cost recovery, is there a process that allows some flexibility for individuals where even that $7 is just like, is there a process there for them?
You mean for programming costs? Like where we do cost recovery for programs?
Yes.
We don't have anything in place, no.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Further questions? Okay, can I get a motion then? The motion would be that the 2022 OPL operating budget be approved and submitted to town council for consideration. That's Andrew, thank you. Seconded by Bill, thank you very much. Further comments or questions? Any objections to the motion? Seeing none, that's approved. Okay, let's move to part two of the budget process. That is the capital budget.
So you have an updated capital budget in front of you, included an updated 10-year forecast. There has been some movement versus what we brought to you in September. You will see that the proposed mini renovation of Central has been shifted out, as well as I guess we didn't shift out, but Woodside still stays for 2023 and 2024. The town now proposes that, I think, and Nancy can speak to this, I think a study be done for Central in 2024 to really review that building as well as the whole DCH, Downtown Cultural Hub piece to it. And really, instead of us doing a piece here and a piece here, knowing that a potential bigger build is coming, that we just kind of attempt to put everything there together. In addition, the Palermo land purchase has been added for 2022, and you will see the construction costs for that branch, I think, are now in 2026, 2027, and 2028. Targeted for that. There was an increase for North Park by roughly $1 million, and that is related to increased land costs. So happy to take any comments about that, but you can see the full list of what we're proposing on page 39 or page 2 of 3 of that report. And then the 10-year forecast is in the appendix.
Questions? Thank you. Is your hand up? No? Okay. Any questions? So, Bill, go ahead.
I don't have a question, but I have a correction under OPL.ca enhancements. It should be June 2021, not June 2022, I think.
Oh, yes, you're right. Yeah, thank you.
So I have a question, and it relates to something, I don't know if I misheard you, Tara. You said that there's an increase of $1 million in the North Park project due to land costs?
Yes.
We own that land?
Can Nancy speak to that?
Nancy?
I'll speak to that. So one of the things we have done in our development charge background study over the past 2 studies is we are buying the land from ourselves.
Yeah.
So the logic behind that is, we happen to own that land, but if we were to build the community center on the other side of the street, we would have had to bought the land. So the developers, I will be honest, weren't overly excited about that, but it's been in the last 2 background studies. So that's why we do that.
Yeah, as soon as you said development charges, I immediately knew why. So thank you. Thank you for that. And my second question is probably not budget related, maybe sort of budget related, but North Park, or the 60-mile branch. Remind me, what is the anticipated date of closure of that branch based on this move?
So right now we are targeting June, July of next year. I will be bringing a report on that exact subject to November.
Okay. And has there been any consideration or thought given to relocating it somewhere else in that immediate area?
You're stealing my thunder for November.
Okay, so I will step down and allow you to thrill us with your
No, I
updates.
think we have a pretty solid proposal. We're just kind of working out some of the tweaks with different parties, but I think we have a pretty solid interim solution.
That's great. I'm so happy to hear that. And I'm sure my Ward 7 councillor colleagues are going to be happy to hear that as well. And I just want to ask the cost, will you report as well on the cost of moving? You had $2.5 million to move the branch? Like, is that coming in November as well?
Yeah, it'll be updated. That is estimated that if we were going to move it and if we had to put in full services, it is what we thought might be the most it would be. The area that we're looking at, some of that may not be needed. In terms of like landscaping, putting in sidewalks, all those kind of pieces was built into the 2. But we don't want to update it again until we finish some of our conversations.
And my last question, I think, on this is, if we are closing that branch in next June, aren't there a whole lot of hours that could be suddenly reallocated to Clearview?
Well, the idea is that wouldn't be closed long.
I'm sorry?
It wouldn't be closed long.
Yeah, but even if it was closed, 4 weeks, which I imagine it would be, that's 30 days of full staffing. So,
And we'd have to look at it.
pardon me?
We could look at it.
I would look at that gap
Okay.
and use that gapping money to potentially give Ward 3.
Well, it's not staffing costs because we still have those staff. They would just be reallocated to different
But
branches.
it's 6 of one, half dozen of the
Right,
other, right?
yeah.
Because it's
Yeah.
it's people or dollars. So please look at that.
Okay.
And maybe we don't have to touch the other hours at all.
We could look at.
Okay. And you might need to increase hours at Iroquois Ridge for a brief period of time as well to help fill the
To
gap.
take the overflow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? Comments? Can I get a motion to approve the capital budget recommendation, please? Moved by, don't all jump at once. I can't, oh, there you go. Pankage and seconded by Susan, thank you very much. Any last call for comments or questions? Seeing none, are there any objections to the motion? Terrific, that's approved, thank you. Okay, back to a kinder, gentler report, the CEO Goal Quarterly Update.
Yeah, so as the board knows, the board approves my goals each year, and then I report on them quarterly. So this is the third quarter report. Please ignore the colors. There was some confusion between Christina and I about the colors, so they're not really overly representative of what it is. But just to highlight, overall, I think things are going really, really well. You'll see the first two relate to strategic planning, which is actually up next on the agenda, and I think we're in a really great place there. And I'm hoping that I certainly am really very pleased and excited about where we landed, and I hope the board feels the same. Pandemic planning continues, although I'm not going to lie, when I kind of wrote that at the beginning of the year, I was really hoping we'd be in a slightly different place by this point, but we are where we are. And I do think we have done a really solid job with updating our services, introducing new services, and kind of shifting things as needed as we've kind of progressed through the ever-changing regulations of the year. We continue to work closely with the town in terms of recovery planning. That, again, continues to shift more into 2022, but we're definitely having those conversations, not just with the town, but also with other community groups, job hunting, and other kind of organizations about how we can support as the economy and as general life comes back, hopefully over the next 6 months to a year. Following that, we have staff engagement. We had a staff engagement strategy that we continue to work on. Now, there are a couple items here that are delayed and will only happen in 2022. And mostly, again, that is related to the ongoing pandemic and directly connects to the board will remember that in 2018 and 2019, we introduced a staff development day. We were hoping to bring that back in fall of this year. That didn't happen. So we're actually hoping, fingers crossed, that we could actually bring that back to June in 2022. And again, engage the staff and have a staff group that really helps us drive that. So again, we'll take a look at that in the new year and kind of see how the pandemic progresses. There are a number of things that we've completed and one that still continues to be in progress, although I'm going to be completely honest with that one. We are re-looking at that feedback question and just being like, is that the best way or can we get about that in kind of a different thing? But the concept and the why still exists, just the execution, we may shift it slightly to, I think, something that may fit a little bit better. But I feel that recognition has been going really, really well. We did staff goals that are basically trickled down from these goals, again, following that pyramid piece to it. And so I'm looking forward to getting updates on those in the fourth quarter. And then for my budget goals, we just had a great conversation with that, but I hope, the goal was to ensure the 2022 budget aligns with OPL resources and the strategic plan and pandemic recovery efforts. And I think we're in a pretty solid place. We might have to be a little creative next year in terms of what we implement for strategic planning, but we definitely have some ideas about what we might be able to kind of shift around and move or adapt. To that, and then in terms of personal goals, so I will complete the Executive Management Certificate at DeGroote by the end of November. I do have an upcoming course on leading change for innovation and impact that I'm quite excited about. And then the second one is to expand my network to other organizational leaders in the community. This has been a little bit of a challenge. I have made some progress, and once the strategic plan is approved, I'm really excited to take that out into the community. So I've also been waiting a little bit for that, but I do have some emails lined up to go out over the next couple days with EDs, Acclaim, Home Sweet Hope, and some others. Really have some conversations about how, in particular, that fourth pillar about enriching lives and building healthy communities, how we can help them and how they can help us achieve that through 2022. So I am excited about that. And happy to take questions on any other of these goals.
Board members, any questions? Susan?
I just wanted to make a comment here in this very challenging 18 months that we've had, and particularly this last year. Just wanted to thank you for your work on these goals, Tara. I think you've worked really hard, and I'm pleased with the progress that I see here.
Thank you.
Thanks, Susan. Anything further? So, okay, Janet, yep.
I concur with what Susan said. I think that it has been a year and a half of absolute requiring innovation and creativity, perseverance, patience. And the fact that you've made the progress you've made is just, I think it's exemplary. And I'm personally very, I'm happy to see some of the progress on the people side, because while, I mean, people have have had probably the greatest impact through COVID, and yet creating a greater connection with them, reminding them, and your town halls, I think it's sustained them through a difficult time. So I thank you for that as well.
No, thank you. And I am hosting another town hall on November 8th to present the strategic plan, should it be passed tonight, to the board, to the staff. So we're excited. I'd also like to thank you and also thank all the staff, particularly Joe and Simona and the team behind. I mean, they're really the doers and the implementers, and the ideas that they come up with are always amazing. So.
Anything further? So I have a question, and then I'll compliment you too. My question is with respect to the work with Town of Oakville to create recovery plan to support both Oakville businesses and residents. Do you have any thoughts on how the library could better support Oakville businesses?
So we've been giving this some thought, and I do know that the town is working on a recovery plan, and we're kind of in and out of that as possible. We are talking about, in particular, job seeking and how else we can kind of support. And some of the conversations that I'm hoping to have are with Drew Redden and some of the other businessy groups in there to really have that conversation to see exactly how the library can fit in those pieces. Yeah.
Just a suggestion.
Yeah.
One of the things that I think if you were to, like a lot of businesses, a lot of people who are looking at businesses as alternatives now or trying to pivot their businesses, reaching out to let businesses know about the resources that are available in libraries and non-book resources like 3D printers, all those sorts of things. I think there's a lot of businesses that may not be able to afford capital costs because of what we've just gone through. So that would be a great way. And even for that matter, meeting space and such that we talked about. If you recall, we totally redrew your plan for Glen Abbey. So maybe reaching out and talk to businesses about those sorts of things. Just some thoughts. Yeah. On your reaching out to community leaders, have you considered putting an all call out to service clubs about being available to speak to them during their usually monthly, sometimes weekly meetings? I know that service clubs are all, the ones that weren't convening during COVID are all pretty much back now. I know the Rotary clubs are all meeting. Most of them are still doing it electronically. The Optimist Club has been, I think they're on the second meeting in person, physically distanced and safe. So have you considered that? And if not, would you consider that as being an option?
No, I absolutely would. I mean, I've been approached by different service groups, but I haven't necessarily actively put that option out there. Completely happy to do so. Wendy Ranella also invited me to speak on her TV show in January, which I'll be doing. I forget the date, but it's early January, so I'll keep the board apprised of that as well.
Yeah, most of those service clubs have money, and they have money that they like to provide support for good community initiatives. The Optimists in particular focus strictly on youth. So, I mean, those are the Rotary has money, Optimists, all those groups have resources, and that's what they raise the money to support community groups. So I think it's great to get out there, not just to expand your network, but to also, potentially see some more development funds coming in.
No, absolutely. And I'm always happy to talk about the library. They kind of regret inviting me sometimes.
Okay, those are softballs because I think, again, like everybody else has been indicating, I think you're doing a great job in light of the circumstances, and want to thank you and your team for, the due diligence you've given to running a great service, throughout this and for months to come, and for being flexible too. I mean, we've now sort of rocked your world a little bit tonight on the budget, but you're doing it with grace and understanding, and we do appreciate that very much. So thank you.
Thank you.
Members of the board, I need a motion to receive the CEO's report, please. Susan and Janet, thank you. Any objections to the receipt? I don't see any, so I'm going to declare that's received and approved. Next up is the strategic plan. I'm just wondering, we are at 8:32. I know we had a couple minutes for motion crafting, but I'm going to see if anybody wants to have a few minutes just to stretch your legs, grab a glass of water, use the facilities, whatever. Is that of interest to anybody or everybody? I'm seeing a thumbs up. So I'm going to, let's recess until 8:40. See you in 8 minutes. It's 8:40, so let's move on. And our next matter on the agenda is 6.5, the 2022-2024 strategic plan.
So hopefully what you found in the report is still fresh in your brain. It is what we discussed at the special board meeting dedicated to strategic planning last week. So as the board work towards, we are proposing an updated strategic plan with a vision of connecting people to what inspires them, a mission of we bring together people, information, and ideas to enrich lives and build healthy communities, values of equitable access, curiosity, belonging, lifelong learning, intellectual freedom, and exceptional service, many of which we've already had discussion about today. And then highlighting our 4 strategic pillars that we will be working towards over the next 3 years, 2022 to 2024, expanding our reach, promoting digital discovery, investing in staff to deliver exceptional customer experiences, and enriching lives and building healthy communities. So happy to take any questions about the proposed 2022 to 2024 strategic plan.
Members of the board, do you want to start all over again and redraft this from scratch? I think it was a slowly I turned moment. Members of the board, do you have any questions about the strategic plan? By the way, everybody, well done. Staff and board for the hard work on this particular project. No questions? Would somebody like to move the approval? That's moved by Susan, seconded by Janet. Last call for comments or questions? Seeing none, is there any objection to the approval of our strategic plan? This is the big deal. This is I'm surprised it's going without any questions, but I guess we've spent so much time on it that there's not many more questions we can ask. So congratulations, we now have a 2022 to 2024 strategic plan. So well done, everybody. Okay, next up is the CEO update. Our
Yes.
favorite part of every meeting.
And I brought back the PowerPoint.
Oh, awesome.
So before we get to the PowerPoint, though, I will just highlight, because I want to just do that on record, the long service recognition. We are recognizing a number of staff for their long service with the library, including Moray Curry for 40 years. She has been with us a very long time, and we can't imagine it without her. Same with Jillian Young, and then further down. But we're really excited every year to celebrate those staff with long service. So just some COVID updates. So you all know that as of Friday, the Ontario government released a plan to safely reopen Ontario and manage COVID for long term. They're running out of titles for these plans, I think, which sets a preliminary path to gradually lift the remaining health restrictions with a goal of having everything removed as of March. What was released on Friday has no impact on library services. We continue as we are, which is not requiring proof of vaccination for any service except third-party room rentals, and that is due to the legislation requirement for rentals in particular. Any questions about the COVID update? Sorry. Okay.
Not seeing any.
So the Glen Abbey exterior renovation, this started, construction started on October 18th. We're very excited about that. Work will continue as much as weather will permit for over the next little while. And we are expected to open that space in spring of 2022. We'll keep you updated once we have a better idea about what gets completed in 2021, which will give us an idea about when we could potentially expect to have it open in 2022, but we're very excited that they started work on that, and we'll bring updated pictures as we can. It's a bit of a mess back there, but progress, right? And then also we're really excited about this. So we have our 3 story walks that are located around Oakville, and we do change out the story quarterly. The story walk at Tannery Park, this time we partnered with the Lighthouse for Grieving Children in honor of November, which is Children's Grief Awareness Month. We're actually highlighting a title written by a mother whose children went through the program at Lighthouse. So it has very special meaning to Oakville. She's an Oakville resident. So this one up is currently up. It went up today. So if you're down at Tannery Park, you will see that the beacon is lit up blue, which is the color of Children's Grief Awareness Month, and you can read the story as well.
Thank you. Janet had put her hand up after the last slide. I just want to come back to her for a second. Janet, did you have a question?
It just is it's a minor thing, but those pictures show those trees don't have tree protection around them, and they're supposed to have tree protection around them when they're doing those renovations. So maybe you could just.
We'll follow up with FCM.
Yeah, it's, yeah, otherwise you're gonna lose the nice trees.
Yeah, no, we don't want to do that. Okay.
Thank you. Good call. Eagle Eye Hazel Field. That's what we're going to call you now.
Oh, and then this is a new thing that we're introducing at OPL. They are donation taps. So we're partnering with TipTap to offer tap for donate displays. So basically they'll go on things like our friendly finds at the different locations, so that if people don't necessarily have money on them, because I don't know about you, but I never have money on me, that they can simply tap their card or tap their phone, the different amounts, and that gets deducted and then added to us. So we're piloting these at numerous different locations with the hope of generating just more on-the-spot donations, particularly at our friendly finds. And then we'll also, once we start doing events, bring them out to events as well to allow people to give us donations on the spot. So we're testing those out. We're excited to kind of see where those could take us.
Very cool.
Yeah, so just an example of what that'll look like out at the friendly finds. And they should be out in the branches. Oh, they're out in the branches now. So last week was Ontario Public Library Week, which is one of our favorite weeks of the year. This year's theme was One Card, Endless Possibilities. And you may have noticed, because we definitely pushed that out through all our social channels last week, we highlighted different branches, different clients, different customers, different partners, donors, throughout the week, really highlighting the different services that we had. I think we actually had a maker entrepreneur highlighting our laser cutter and the work that she was doing in order to build. I think they go in baby rooms, like baby names. She was customizing baby names. Just again, try and trigger people that we have this stuff and they're welcome to you come in and use it for their businesses. So we might have seen that, so we were really excited. We also did little videos for all our different branches to kind of highlight people, as well as ask people different trivia questions and such throughout the week. It was responded to really, really well. You can see that overall we put out 44 posts on Instagram and Facebook, 26 on Twitter, and it got some pretty good reach. We're pretty happy about what we've seen so far. And again, any opportunity that we have to highlight the faces of Oakville, not Oakville Public Library, not just the staff, but our customers and all the people who help us be as good as we can.
That's a pretty impressive Instagram metric.
Yeah, we were really excited about it. And that's what I had this month.
Thank you. Questions on the CEO report, Janet?
I just wanted to comment on the work with Lighthouse. I think it's first of all, that's one of your outreaches, so that's great, right? But the integration across, so what you're doing along with Tannery, along with what's going to happen at the BIA with the butterfly wall, it just shows us that we can partner so well to bring awareness to, some tragedy, but also some helpful ways for young people to see their way through a very difficult journey. But so I think it's phenomenal. And I love that tap because the Canadian Mental Health Association has just started the Giving Tree. I don't know if they've approached you at all about it, but we connected them with the BIA, and the Giving Tree is going to use the tap as well to see if they can raise funds for mental health. So it is it's going to make its good debut at the library, and hope others will become addicted to tapping.
Yeah, no, we'll definitely keep you updated on how that goes. We're excited to kind of see where it could make an impact.
Great. Further questions? What is the financial arrangement on that tip tap thing? Is it a percentage of what's tapped, or how do we Because it's a third party, is that
We pay a monthly fee?
25 a month and then like 1.2%.
oh, that's very reasonable, okay.
So in case anybody didn't hear, we pay a monthly leasing fee, I think, about $25 a month, and then it's a 1.2
Yeah,
interest on the payments.
the fees just not leasing. There's a SIM card, like it's not connected to anything. So it's a SIM fee, it's the LTE network, it's everything
That's
Yeah.
wow, is it $25 per tap device?
per location.
Per location? So there's multiple tap, because I saw one, there's a $2 and a $5 one? So is that $25 for each one of those boxes, or $25 for that display?
For display.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's a great initiative, thank you.
Yeah. And again, we'll keep a track of, how that balances out.
Yeah, absolutely. If we could meet in person, you could bring it to board meetings. And we could do like.
We'll have to figure out what amount to put on the box.
We could basically, every time somebody speaks without raising their hand, they have to tap. Okay, members of the board, I'm not seeing any more questions. I'll look for motion to receive the CEO's report, please. Moved by Bill, seconded by Andrew. Any further questions or comments? Seeing none, I'll ask if there is any objections. There are none, that is received. Members of the board, you have on our information items the meeting schedule for 2022. And can I get somebody to, what is the received? Okay, can I get a motion to receive that, please? Susan and Andrew, thank you. Any questions about the schedule for 2022? Yes, Janet.
So we've never talked about going to like the frequency. I don't know if we've ever had a really lengthy discussion about it, but I just wondered if we needed all of those meetings.
I think we have a legislative requirement, do we not?
So it changed, and it changed. We used to have 10.
Yep.
And then it changed, and I think it was in 2019, it changed from 10 to 7. We did have a conversation at the board level that we would continue with the 10, and then I would cancel or discuss with Jeff about canceling meetings to kind of see where we kind of pan out. And then the pandemic hit. And so 2020 and 2021 have been, we had less in 2020, but we've certainly had more in 2021, particularly around strategic planning and the special meetings. So absolutely happy to have that discussion. But we did originally talk about it, but then I think we just got kind of stuck with the global pandemic that kind of threw some wrench in the idea of really trying to figure out what is really appropriate now that the legislation has changed.
So my only comment would be that Thursday, October 27th, depending on who's running for office, et cetera, how does that work?
Is that that the election day? Is that?
I believe the election is a Monday.
Yeah, it's the 22nd.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so whoever, regardless of the election results, current council would still be sitting that week.
Yeah, we're counselors, and the board members are still board members until November 30th, I believe it is.
That's the appointments end basically November 30th, and new ones start, I think, December 1st.
Yeah. Same with council and board are the same way.
Okay, thank
Anything further? Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any objection to the approval of that or of the receipt of the schedule? I'm not seeing any, so that is approved. Any new business to come before the board this evening? I'm not seeing any, so the date and time of next meeting is Thursday, the 25th of November. And it's at this point, it's a virtual meeting still, so we will see you on Zoom. And I look for motion to adjourn. Janet and Bill, any objections to the adjournment? I dare you. See no objections, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you for your time and attention and for the great work tonight. We'll see you next month, if not sooner.